Oh, well,
Which
sure.
one? Yeah.
Right here.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, it works good.
They
Yeah, it does. We can go up and down. Yeah, we went all the way down to the bottom of the bluffs and back up.
Really?
The only thing is, it's a little heavy,
Oh.
you know what I mean? So if you're gonna use it in a home use, for someone to run it up with stairs and inside a house, I think it's like
Where is it?
2 or 3
On
times.
the beach?
as heavy.
The rescue squads.
For someone like me that can wrestle it,
So it had like
You
3
better
wheels.
get it to where you need it.
Electric.
that's the thing, I mean, I can't,
Wow.
like carrying it onto the ferry, running up those stairs with it,
Like wheelchair,
you know.
Wow.
So that's the one thing I think, it is a little heavy.
I wonder who invented that.
But, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we should just, I don't think we need 3 of them, and I don't think we should replace the small ones. Just have maybe one.
Number one, there's so many color dots.
Oh.
Yeah.
They tone it out.
Oh.
Yeah, one if it's a special incident, like the blocks,
Oh, God.
you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
What's the bottom?
Yeah, yeah.
Different
we're-
stair chairs with the arms, and for a large person, they don't fit.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know, so
Yeah,
what
because
what do you do
probably
then?
people were on
Kind
the
of-
beach when you went
They're very
to
deep,
rescue, right?
they're
So
donated.
Yeah.
just coming out from that last. Yeah.
We'll keep them,
Yeah. They're closed.
I guess.
Yeah, it's really.
If I was gonna run up onto the third of the stair chair or someone that.
Wow.
Stairs, I'd rather not.
Yeah.
Find out where he is.
Get wider.
Is it the battery that's-
The whole thing, it's got like. Kind of more built.
Yeah, it's a little thing over here.
I mean,
You should see some-
Yeah.
So he sent-
a couple people can carry it.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Where- Where's
Did you see there's like even, some.
I think so, I
Yeah,
think Jordan was gonna
that's-
move some shelves or something, it's a little bigger than other things too. So, I don't, that's just the agility of it, it's just lost with it though.
That's another one, we sent
That's-
that right up.
that's
I
why-
love them.
It's great for the bluffs and like major things like that,
I'm just used to it, but I'm like that.
yeah, exactly, so.
And sons.
Yeah.
You know, it's coming.
Good,
Yeah, I sent her another link.
okay.
You guys hear us?
Taking care of.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. It's 4:07. This is New Shore and Planning Board, Wednesday, February 14th. First item on the agenda. is Capital Improvement Program 2025 to 2030. Act on the consistency of the proposed capital improvement program with the New Shore Comprehensive Plan. Mary Ann?
Thank you. So what's before you this afternoon is the capital plan as the chair just stated, and what's required of you folks is to determine as to the consistency with the comprehensive plan. Just as a reminder to some of you folks, there was a change in the ordinance a few years ago. Originally, prior to my time, the capital plan was pretty much put together, as I understand it, by the planning board, working with department heads. And what we did was remove the planning board from it and left it with the town manager. And then ultimately, the town manager presented the capital plan to the planning board for your review, input, and also determining whether it's consistent with the capital improvement plan. As I've stated to you folks last year, this is, as they say, it's a capital plan. It's nothing more than a planning document subject to change, and it's over multi-years. What we do is we do meet with the department heads. They come in and request what they would like in their capital plan. Keep in mind, capital plan is anything over $25,000, which, you know, Amy and I have had discussed this. It was originally, I think, 5, and we bumped it up 15. We bumped it to 25. At some point, it's an ordinance change. We may want to explore bumping it higher because that's relatively low for a capital plan. Some of the requests that are in here will eventually become part of the operating budget. Also, keep in mind, some of the requests that the department heads did make to us were below that threshold, and it'll be part of the operating budget. So you won't see it in the capital plan. One of the couple of things to point out that came up last year, and we're still working on this going forward, is the segregation as to how the capital plan is being funded. So on page 3 at the bottom, it speaks about possible funding breakdown. And one, it talks about tax, and those are going to be your smaller capital improvement plans. The other talks about some infrastructure or opera money. The others is bond funded, which is always has to be authorized and approved by the voters at a financial town meeting. And the other one is under other funding. Most of that is grant funding. We do have some capital plans in here, capital projects that we have applied for grants, that the grants are in being under reviewed at this point. A couple of the grants do have a matching requirement, and the percentage amount does change from grant to grant. Most likely, not most likely, if we don't receive that grant, the matching piece will also come out of the capital improvement plan, and then we'll revisit it from a perspective going forward as to whether or not we want to fund it in a different mechanism, or maybe we'll apply for another grant down the road. This year, the town has been very fortunate that we have been awarded a few grants, and some of you folks are familiar with them, working with town planner Allison, especially as it relates to climate and resiliency, which you will now see in the capital plan. The last grant she got, we were awarded was from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, was $465,000. That did have a match, but a NIFA grant that was also received is what's matching that. So what I'll do now is go through this capital plan with you folks, and be happy to take any questions you may
Can
have.
we ask questions as you go? It might be.
It doesn't matter. It's up to you folks what you want to do. I'll leave that up to you or the chair, how you want to handle it.
Why don't you go through it and then we could revisit?
Okay. So let's start on page 1 of 1. And so that, just is obviously fiscal 24, budget 24 is the fiscal year that we're currently in, that's coming to an end. Fiscal 25 is next fiscal year, which starts July 1 through June 30th. Then we go 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and finally a total. So just to give you some idea of the landscape. One of the things Amy and I just spoke about yesterday with this capital plan that I think that we'll probably explore doing, and I think we're just definitely going to do it in the future years, is to provide a narrative. And that way we'll put a narrative based on criteria, building and grounds, and that way it offers the opportunity for the reader to see some of the narrative. And even myself, even though I'm involved with this, there's been times I said, Amy, okay, remind me, what are we doing here? And even we have to go back to a note. So I think the narrative is one thing that is missing from this other capital, long-term 5-6 year capital budgets I've worked with. We did have some narrative, and it provides some opportunity for the general public and the reader to really understand the project, because we offer some information associated with the project and also the particular facility. We put how long we've had the facility and things of that nature. So with that, going in fiscal year 25, that was starting at the very top with Block Island Health Services is an emergency generator to the tune of $150,000. That's a generator. The generator they had, although we're still working well, was at end of life. The funding for that, as you see, will be opera funding, and the council did approve that. Next, we have the Coast Guard Station House. In fiscal year 25, we're looking at $150,000. That's just ongoing maintenance work and stability of that facility. Going forward in 26, we do have $1.5 million. And that again is addressing some renovation and stability to that facility. Going on from that, we're moving down to the library. The 30,000, the 60,000 that you see in 25 and 30 going forward, most of that stuff is related to HVC with the library. We've been doing it piecemeal. Each year we've been budgeting some work for the HVAC, and we're doing it by zones. We done some work this year, and we're looking to continue that work and project. So keep in mind, also with the long-term capital budget, you will see things like that. Instead of doing something one year, we may break things up over multiple years if we're able to do that. Dispatch renovations, $100,000. That's mainly for the dispatch area. Any of you folks that have been in the dispatch area, people walk in the front door. The security of that area is limited. And I think we really need to enhance the security of that area. Anyone can walk in and they're right in the dispatch area. And that's not how we're looking to do this. Next is beaches, Gracie Cove. We did submit a grant application for Gracie Cove for this year, and there is a match, and it's a DEM grant. We anticipate hearing about that DEM grant, and we also did one further down for pickleballs, probably sometime in spring, they tell us. Usually the grant announcements for this, it's a Rhode Island DEM recreational grant. And we will usually hear about those grants probably in mid-April. I'm thinking mid to end of the April, we'll know whether we're getting that grant. Facilities, town beach facilities, that's obviously the pavilion where the beach is. And that also is some regular maintenance, some improvements of the plumbing and also the decking. After that, we have North Light. The North Light is in continuing need of renovations. That facility, like other facilities within the town, we haven't been as diligent as we should be with funding these facilities and doing the necessary improvements and maintenance. So we're looking at $200,000 there. The good news is in 23-24, we did spend that money on that North Light facility. However, we still need to continue on with that. Thomas property, this $1 million we have for 24, we'll finally have the whole Thomas property buttoned up and finalized with 4 new apartments, hopefully late summer, early spring. I would like to be optimistic and get it done earlier, but we shall see. The next one is under the comprehensive community plan update at $60,000. This is a statutory requirement that we update the comprehensive plan. I think every 10 years, I think it is. Allison can correct me on that. But that's what that is to do a complete comprehensive plan update. As we get down to fire and rescue, a lot of this relates to the equipment for fire and rescue. The $1.2 million that you see in fiscal 26 is for replacement of engine. I'm sorry. Yes, hang on.
Ladder.
It's engine 4. Nope, that's engine 4. The $1 million the following year is for the ladder truck, and the $100,000 in the year after that is to replace a pumper on a ladder truck. To get back down, also in the fire department, there's $350,000 and $350,000 for equipment in 25-26, and that's a portable pumper. If anyone saw, it was a fairly large pumper with a trailer that was at the was showcased at the electric company, and what they do is they're able to move it and drop it in the water in a number of different areas, especially in the downtown area and stuff like that. The fire at the Harborview brought that to our attention that we really need portable pumper such as that, and that's an example of what we'll try to do over 2 years. The next major thing is what we're calling the public safety complex. That's a $15 million project. We're looking into possibly 2025, possibly construction in 2025. We're just beginning to work on that with both an OPM we're looking to hire, and we think we have one, and get some schematics to the point where we can get it to the voters at the financial town meeting. This particular project has 2 different grants pending on it. We have a $3.5 million what we call a congressional appropriation earmark funds that is pending through Senator Jack Reed's office. It has been approved in the Senate budget. As we all know, things down in DC has been a little shaky right now as to the House and the Senate. We're hoping and optimistic that that funding will still stay and pass the House and ultimately signed by the president, but we will see. Also, just so you know, the medical center through also Senator Reed received $1.5 million of the same kind of congressional funding a year ago. Also, I have applied for another $1 million through the state. The state last year, the General Assembly allocated $11 million for public safety facilities. They have to be what they call close to shovel ready, and we're one of them that's close to shovel ready. It only has $1 million. The maximum we can apply for as a standalone is $1 million. I have no idea how many people applied. That deadline was just a couple of weeks ago, and I don't anticipate hearing for a while on that, at least a good 60 to 90 days. The next vehicle equipment, we finally sat down and started talking about the vehicles. And most of these are vehicles for the employees. Highways, the $30,000 is sand and plows. The $80,000 that you see, which states interdepartmental, we're looking to purchase 2 small pickup trucks. The trucks will be used by the DPW director, the facilities director. It'll be used for North Light. It'll be used for the building official. It'll be used for North Light. So these are 2 vehicles that'll be shared multi-department, long overdue, and that's the $80,000. As we move to page 2 for Harbor, we're looking to expand the West Dock, Old Harbor West Dock at $500,000 in 26. And in 25, we're looking 50,000 for Old Harbor Bulkhead, and 26, another 200,000. Keep in mind, as it talks about in the ordinance, that we usually do a lot of capital projects in 2 stages. Stage 1 is more the study and the design of it. And then ultimately we get to the building of that facility. And it's mainly how any capital projects you're doing on, even though if it wasn't outlined in the ordinance, we'd probably be doing that anyway. Next is the renovation of the visitor center, $75,000. There is a group that is currently working with the Ranowskis on that facility. If you have further questions on that facility, I would ask you to wait, and Amy will answer those because of the fact that my husband works down there. I need to recuse myself from extensive discussion on that, but I thought I'd offer that. The Maritime Center, this was another grant application. We put a $1.5 million grant application for that. Also, through Rhode Island DEM and it's Fish and Wildlife. Again, I expect to hear about that sometime also this spring. Then we get down to replace the Marine Patrol vessel in 27. We anticipate a grant match on that. DEM is extremely generous with our harbor facilities as it relates to grants, whether it's for our pump out boats or also vessels. They usually have grants with some significant matches. So we do expect a match in that, and that's at about $125,000. Finally, technology information. This is pretty straightforward. It's the replacement of our technology. The library is at $50,000 going out. The town has been in the habit of budgeting our technology replacement in the operating budget. The police is looking at $25,000 in 26 and year 28. There's a lot of technology upgrades that the police are doing, including body-worn cameras, which we have funded before, but also as relates to camera and technology and recording for other things that they have going on in that facility. So then we're moving down to a public safety complex. The phase 1 of the $15 million that we spoke about a few minutes ago relates to strictly the fire side of the public safety complex. We're looking at this as being 2 phases. The second phase will be the police station or the police side of it. That building, for the most part, is in pretty decent shape. However, there's also some security improvements that need to be done in that facility. The holding areas and also the prison cells also need to be looked at and probably revamped to more of a modern type of police station. Finally, we get down to Public Works Highway, construction of a highway garage facility. This is in here 25 at $5 million. Just to qualify this may end up moving to fiscal year 26. This is funds that we were anticipated getting from RIDOT. RIDOT was out here a couple of years ago, and they went down to the facility. That facility is owned by the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. They did include in this year's budget $5 million for this facility. Unfortunately, this $5 million did not make it to the governor's budget. You know, no different than we do budget here. Sometimes the department head requests something and it doesn't end up in the town manager's budget to the council. So we're thinking that is moving to fiscal year 26. We thought we tried pushing that a little bit, but with everything going on the George Washington Bridge, that 195 project, I think at this point, as relates to RIDOT, they are focusing on that major project at this point. So I have spoken to staff at RIDOT. They said it still is on their list of projects to get to. They will definitely put in their budget next year. Now that it was taken out this year, it's much overdue need for that particular facility. The highway apartments, the facilities of the highway garage apartments. When working with RIDOT with the $5 million, they did inform us, and understandably so, that they can't use state funding to provide apartment and housing for folks on Block Island. I did say to them that I'll be more than happy to go to the voters and ask for the funding. So what we'll do is we'll work with RIDOT and probably do those projects together. The transfer station construction facility, there's a lot going on right now with the transfer station. We're looking to start doing an investor pilot composting project. Hopefully we'll get that in place before the summer begins. We've been very fortunate. Was in a meeting just Friday where it looks like the Conservancy Group is working with us to help pay for that particular project. Also, what's going on with the facility, it needs to be taken a look at from a programmatic as well as the actual building facility. The $150,000 that you see here is for study and some preliminary planning and preliminary work. The $2 million that you see in the next year will be that major renovation and operation of that facility. As most of you know, you dump your recyclables in one area, then go across and then take your trash. It's not the flow, it's the safety concern and things of that nature. And then we move down to Parks and Recreation, pickleball court of $15,000 in fiscal 25. That's also pending a grant application. As we all know, pickleball has really taken off here on Block Island, as it has everywhere throughout the country. And it seems like everyone's playing no matter what the age. So hopefully that grant would be something we would get and be able to construct that pickleball court, which will be at the Paul O'Brien facility. And also in the year 26, we're looking at $30,000 of resurfacing of the park area there. And finally, school improvements at this point, we have nothing going forward from fiscal year 25 on. We do have a $10.4 million project that is currently underway. The bids are due next week. So we do have a major renovation HVAC project going there. And now this gets into some road-related, transportation-related project. One is Corn Neck Road Resiliency, that $465,000. That's what I spoke about a few minutes ago. That's the grant we just received from Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. And then going out based on that grant, that's a lot of planning of the Corn Neck Road. The actual work we're seeing at $6.2 million that goes out to fiscal year 28. Also, Chapel Street sidewalk, $100,000. Again, that's more of a planning design with $750,000 of construction. Corn Neck Road sidewalk, the 1.1 million, and then another 850. All three of those are what we call Rhode Island Department of Transportation TIPS program. And that's through state or federal funding through the TIPS program. The state road project of $15 million, that was coupled with the $5 million we, with RIDOT coming down here a couple of years ago. It appears they did have an engineering company that you're all seeing in the paper these days, VHB, who did come out on site and took a look at all our roads, drainage, guardrails, all that stuff is including. And they seem to come up with this little significantly more than the 15 million. So the RIDOT is currently reviewing that, so we'll see what happens with that. The good news is at least we got RIDOT here. They're looking at these projects and they're realizing that our infrastructure being our roads that are state roads really need to be addressed. And then we have townwide road improvement projects of 1 million in 25. We did participate in a grant with the state. The state has done it with all municipalities where we had to pay 30% of the project. I'm sorry, the state paid 33% and the town has to pay 67% of it. Every community got the same 33%, and the most we could apply for was the $1 million. So the good news, this is a project where whether you're Block Island or Providence, you're all getting the same 33%. So that goes a long way from our town roads. Those are strictly town road projects. They're not state road projects. And down below is the funding as to how we see the funding taking place for these projects. Amy, did I miss anything? I don't know if you can hear us. Maybe
No,
not.
I think you covered everything in 25. I assume maybe we'll move on to questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I have a couple. First, there's a lot of departments that have a lot of zeros in future years, which worries me. I mean, because this is like long-term planning, like that's the purpose of this. So when I see the school, health service, you know, like there's a lot of zeros. So I just want to make a note. That's a little worrisome, particularly, I mean, even in harbors, like I know that dock maintenance is an annual thing. Vessel replacements is a long-term, you know, we were last time, there was one capital improvement plan discussion where we discussed about that, those very things is like fleet maintenance and just general maintenance that are beyond the threshold, that $25,000 threshold. So that's just, I think when you have that many zeros looking out, it might look like a good thing, but for me, it's a little worrisome, you know, when you don't see a truck being replaced every 5 years. Just a note, that's all. Amy, a question for you. For 2025, it looks like the potential impact for bonding is 17.7 million. How's that going to impact our overall bonding for the town?
Sure. Yeah, obviously that's a pretty significant number. And the majority of that is driven by the fire barn. I think as those conversations evolve and make their way through the next few months up to adoption of the warrant, we're going to have a lot more conversation about debt capacity and what kind of ceilings we start to bump up against when you're looking at numbers this big. So I think if everyone can be prepared for those conversations and engage in them, obviously we do start to run into a scenario where if there is not outside funding for a project like the fire barn, what can we actually afford to do on our own? Obviously, we hope those federal appropriations come through. That makes a big difference. But there is a limit to what we can absorb if we also need to tackle some of the other projects that you're seeing on here.
Right, that's kind of my worry. And
Yep.
can you give me an idea how, let's just take the fire barn. That's a $15 million figure. When this initially, I don't know, a year ago, it was an $8 million figure. Then it was a $10 million figure. How do we get to 15? And again, is it just ask for the moon and you hope to get 75% of it? Or is this like how that figure arrive at that figure? Because I look at another figure in here for Harbor's facility at 1.7. And in that is supposed to be docks and a facility. And I just know that's, in my opinion, not enough. So I just don't know how some of these figures, are the departments just submitting to you or are they getting vetted?
So
You want me to
some of-
take that, Mary Ann, or go ahead?
So most of this stuff does come from the department. And what you'll see is as they get closer to the year, that's when you start seeing the money change up and down. Right now we have $15 million here for fire bond. What we are in the process of doing, and we just had this conversation, we hired an OPM, or in the process of hiring an OPM, which is an owner's project manager, and also hiring an architect. And what they are going to do for us is the schematics of the fire bond, so that we can get to financial town meeting to get to the point of what it's cost. And basically what we do right now is take what we think the total square footage is and apply a dollar factor to
Okay.
it. And we're looking at, with, you know, with the fire bond, we're looking at about $800 to $1,000. They had some preliminary renderings done. And at that point, the architect was talking about $600 a square foot. That did not include any soft costs, which is your architects, your OPM. It did not include any programmatic costs. It's mainly the shell of the building.
Right.
And folks are saying, well, it's a fire bond. It's really a public safety facility. And some of the tech upgrades they're going to do include the oxygen tanks to be able to do that. They are doing a decontamination area, which they don't have. Some of the other things they don't have is the exhaust. Folks now have it, so they have an exhaust system. So when they stop the trucks, or the exhaust doesn't go into the building, it's piped out through the roof. So those are some of the, maintenance issues, programmatic. That doesn't even, yeah, and those don't even jump into some of the other stuff that they're going to need. So the numbers do move, especially in a capital project,
Right.
as we get close.
Okay. And then can either of you, is there anything that was, and this comes, I'm looking at notes from last year. Is there anything that was denied or anything that has been postponed or pushed out? And the reason I mean, those were questions I think from the table last year in my notes. And for next year, I like your idea of a narrative. If that can be included in the narrative, that would also be helpful for next year.
Yeah.
But is there anything that sticks out that was either denied or pushed off or not on this?
Sure, I'll take that, Mary Ann. There's nothing that was denied. There are some things that you're not seeing on this page because they really belong in the operating budget. And so we didn't even put them in front of you. That said, even some things on here really belong in the operating budget, and we still may move them there. And to your earlier question, Chris, about some of those zeros in the out years, that is something I would say the departments are still getting used to. A lot of things that we used to talk about in capital planning are really those fleet maintenance and equipment replacement. And those are all shifting. Those are all shifting to the operating budget, which is where they belong. But it's a new exercise for some of this capital planning. And so especially when we've got big projects front loaded in the schedule, there's not necessarily the practice and the capacity at those outer years, say the last 3 years. So I think that's something we're all still working on. In terms of shifting, there are a couple things that did move. A great example is the 2.5 million for the second part of the public safety complex.
Right.
I think that was originally in 26 or 27. The reality of the scale and cost of part one, which really deals primarily with the fire portion of that, means that we're not going to be ready financially, or we're not going to be ready in terms of being able to think about the police side of that until a couple years later. So to me, that's a really reasonable move and realistic. Doesn't mean it's not a priority, but you can only think about so many things at once.
And also to jump on about the zeros, especially with the schools, just as a reminder, schools also get reimbursed from the state, the 35%, they get reimbursed on principal and interest. And their capital budget comes from their 5-year plan. So they're in the middle of their 5-year plan, and the plan would dovetail into the capital improvement. And what they do, you have someone come in, they assess the building, they look at from an educational standpoint, as well as other infrastructure stuff. So once they get through this project, they'll start that 5-year study again, and then you'll start seeing some numbers drop in.
Good.
So, and that's a ride requirement in Department of Education. So we're in it's a 4-year, 4 four-phase process. And this plan lasts just for 5 years under ride regulations. And we're in the third phase, which is the budgeting, the bidding. And the last phase is when you ask for reimbursement, which is after things are constructed. Once that project starts construction, I see that they'll probably start the process all over again.
Right.
Like a study. And that usually what drives this capital budget.
I agree, Amy, with some of these things don't belong in this budget or at a capital improvement budget. Those transfer to an operational budget. What you mentioned earlier, Marianne, about the threshold right now is 25,000. Or Amy, what do you think is the appropriate number? Because I remember the discussion, it used to be 10, then it went to 15, and we're sitting here talking about things that I don't want to talk about repairing a roof. Like, you just need to do it. I think what's important are the bigger items. So what's the right number in your eyes?
I'll throw my number out and Amy can throw her number out. My number is going to be the 100,000.
Okay.
Amy, what's your number?
I was gonna go with 50, but part of that is, I think it was the planning board that wanted us at 25, so.
Okay. We wanted 50, but now I'm up to 100.
Um,
Couple of years have gone by,
I
so I'm up
think
to
I
100.
remember Margie being pretty
Yeah, she was.
vocal about that.
Yeah.
To us.
But the planning board be vocal. If they want 25, we're happy with 25, but don't be surprised if at some point in the next couple of years, we try, and maybe Amy and I will meet in the middle at 75.
Jolted.
Does anybody else have any questions? I've answered all mine, or I've all mine answered. Yep.
Okay.
Sosha?
First of all, I'm always so impressed with what goes into this. And I want to thank you for that. Okay, so my general observations were that some items have either been increased or dropped or moved. And just a comment on the side that please incorporate your storm tools in your planning for any new construction. I will be proposing or asking the planning board at some point that be a requirement to think about it. All right, question number one. What is the status of the library elevator? It was slated initially for 2024 at 150K. Was that
It's actually in
done?
great shape. No, not, with some sort of regular maintenance and the right kind of attention, it's been performing well and doesn't currently need replacement. I
Okay.
do keep it there as a line because it's something we're all a little sensitive to, and at the moment it cannot be repaired, it will accelerate to the top of the list. But right now, we seem to have a great relationship with our maintenance provider, and things are moving really smoothly.
Okay, question number two, the West Beach revetment business. It said, I have here, what about West Beach landfill slope repair in 2025 and from 2025 through 2028 at $50,000. Was that spent, do you know?
Amy, you want to take that?
Sure.
Reading, I think.
That's an example of something we're carrying in the operating budget now, and will be continuing to, in that the work that we're doing there is sort of whatever needs to be done in that year based on what we see, with the acknowledgement that with one storm, that landscape can change pretty quickly. So it's really not capital investment. It's meeting the maintenance needs of that slope.
Thank you. Number three, I have 4 questions. Number 3, I'm going to transportation, Cornet Road resiliency construction at 6 million, blah, blah, blah. How can that number even be determined if we don't have a study that explains what needs to be done on Cornet Road?
That, I don't know, Marianne, you want me to speak to that? That figure came from, Horn Neck Road, Transportation Resiliency Study. So, I know it was several years ago at this point, but there was several alternatives. And the town at the time when it was presented, that was that VHB study, had selected a portion of one of them. So there was a VHB provided an estimate as to that cost. So that is what the that project line item is.
So theoretically, this may not even happen. Is what I'm saying. If the study reveals a different kind of recommendation, that cost will change.
So at the time, this was CDBG DR money the town had received, and it was 2017, the study, and it was focused on the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, so the road bed itself. There was mention of some other alternatives in the study. Since that study has been completed and the Sea Level Rise Committee has was established and become active, and other funding sources have become available, the discussion about nature-based solutions and that being maybe a first step, or trying to implement that as a priority has come to the forefront. And so that's where the funding is. The NIFWIF grant, the RIB grant that we have over $600,000 for, that's planning and design related to dune restoration and some construction of implementing some of that at some vulnerable points along the roadway. So, the town anticipates that moving forward as a first step in protecting the roadway. But we still have in there the capital budget, the dollars for actual physical improvement of the road.
So to follow up on that, who is financing that 6 million for Cornet? Where's that money coming from?
At this point, we haven't decided that. We'll probably look for some grant opportunities, and it may eventually be a bond authorization. Since it's to 2028, we have some time to do some working on that.
And I think it's, being a state road, in conversations with the state, being something that will be occurring.
All right, so you're looking at an estimate right now based on what you know, based on the information that's available. Last is a recommendation that we put at the financial town meeting, that your document includes the outstanding or our debt limits. Do you know what I'm saying? How much is bonded, how much is available for each of those years, so that people, when they're requesting something, have a better understanding of what is reasonable. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Anybody else?
I have just a couple questions. Did you? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mary?
Just to follow up on the Core Neck Road, first of all, I agree. Thank you for doing this. It's always so nice to see all these numbers all worked out. It's just so nice. So thank you for that. But just to follow up with the not transfer station, that's my second question. Allison, the Core Neck Road resilience study and the work that's proposed to be done on it. I was wondering, is there any money available for that from the IRA money? The federal.
Yeah,
money
I know.
for
I mean, there's
Infrastructure resilience money.
280 different programs, grant programs
Yeah, I
within
know,
that.
sorry.
So off the top of my head, I wouldn't know which grant program, potentially, it would be eligible under.
Would we look into that? Is that something Sea Level Rise would do or town would do?
We can, but again, I think the talk is like, it's a state road. We need to have conversations with the state, on the implementation of improvements and the funding of that. So,
I just wondered if also had been looked into, because it is related to the resiliency adaptation money at the federal level.
mhm.
But sounds like something we can pursue later, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
In
it's
addition
still,
to
that's
the
why it's
Midwest.
still included here because it's something that's on the table. But like I said, we've been prioritizing the nature-based solutions and moving forward with those. They're you know, potentially more cost, the lower cost,
Mhm.
and funding available for those,
Okay.
but we can
Thank you.
certainly investigate that.
Yeah, there was just billions of dollars available. So, I mean, at the federal level, so it's throughout the whole country, not just our particular state.
Yeah, so I misspoke when I mentioned authorizing a bond issue. That is a state road, and that would fall under the state.
Mm, okay. Then just a question about the Core Neck Road Resilience Study. And I was glad to hear, thank you for mentioning that first phase of any of these would be a study and design study before it got started. But one of the things that came up with that particular area, that location that came up in Sea Level Rise Committee was one of the geologists had suggested moving the site. Does that come up at all in these longer range plans in terms of the cost of maintaining that site where it is and the option to move it, if there is one, you know, to
I'm not
move a little
familiar with
further?
what you're talking about moving the site.
What
It
site?
was the transfer station. Just
Oh, I'm
was it
sorry, you
the
said transportation resiliency before, so you're on transfer station.
transfer station?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so since it's. No, Mary.
Oh, no, sorry, I thought you said transfer station. Sorry, didn't mean to upset anybody. Just wondered if that.
I have not had any conversations about
Okay.
relocating the transfer
I
station.
think
so-
that was our late Norris that brought
Pardon
that
me?
up. I think Norris back in the day brought moving it. That was his desire.
Yeah, it's true.
So
Also,
I
it
don't
came
think
up-
it's been broached since, like.
It came up in sea level
yeah.
rise discussions because of the vulnerability of that site because
Yep.
of sea level rise climate change. And it was the geologist that spoke about it, forgetting his name. Well, now that everyone's alert.
Is that a test?
No, I would never do that.
Mary, you have anything
Um,
else?
Hmm?
You have anything else?
Just I'm always curious about the school. It seems to, like every building, need maintenance, of course. And maybe the narrative that you mentioned would help in understanding how that building will be maintained over the years to come.
Yeah, I think part of the NAVA would include
Yeah.
the ride requirement, the 5-year study.
Mm.
And we have to spend the money in the 5 years, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's good, you know, to kind of put that in writing so people really understand.
Yeah.
Claire?
Yeah, I just
Go ahead.
to echo what Mary was saying, first of all, a lot of my questions were answered by what you had to say, and so just another plug for adding a narrative. Because you know, I mean, I try to pay attention to what's going on, but I sometimes feel like I come in blind and don't quite know why certain numbers have been picked. You know, another encouragement that there be longer range planning. Just because I think that would help with understanding where we are as a town and what needs improvement over the coming years and that kind of thing. Making sure everyone's paying attention again. I am going to talk about moving the town beach.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was on my list.
Facilities. I'm just curious, you know, there was a town council meeting relatively recently where we were talking about where folks were talking about the town beach parking lot, the town beach dune system, the town beach facility in general. And I'm just wondering, you know, why we're potentially spending $100,000, if I'm right about that, to improve that facility when there might be other plans in play. You know, I understand if it's a safety concern or something like that, but if it's to, yeah, I think that we're sort of trying to think beyond what's always been there. And so I'm wondering if that's been a part of the conversation at all. So that's been a focus of the Sea Level Rise Committee. Is that part of?
Do you want to take that one, Amy? You've been more intimately involved in those discussions.
Sure. I missed your reference to the 100,000 because to my knowledge, the town's not planning to invest at that level in that facility
Where is
for
it?
a lot of the reasons you described.
Oh, sorry, 30,000.
Yeah, so 30,000 is
Sorry
is
about that.
more of that borderline between capital and maintenance. It's making sure that our plumbing, which is now about 4 years old, is up to snuff, and any decking
Okay.
and things like that. So this is really just maintaining the facility as it is. There was pretty significant discussion when it was redone about whether this was the time to move it, and the decision was not at the moment. But the knowledge that, again, with a major storm, that building can pretty much be written off, and that concept wouldn't be a stretch. We're not investing a huge amount in that site at this point. And in fact, because of some of the insurance conditions when we rebuilt it after Sandy, we wouldn't be able to rebuild it where it was a second time. So that preparation probably needs to be something that is on somebody's list about what we would do in the event that it disappeared quickly. But yeah, I don't know that anyone's really working on that at the moment.
Okay,
Is that fair to say, Marianne?
Yes.
great, thank you. And then, I think, yeah, my last question is, I think, I'm not mistaken, the town has retained, a grant writer and grant researcher, and I'm just wondering if you guys have a report on sort of the success of that, and whether or not any of these grants that I'm seeing listed here were funded thanks to their work, or there are things that they're working on to fund some of these big projects. You could speak to that.
So the grant writer has done some of the grants, and some of them staff had done. What we find out is when you have a grant writer, sometimes it takes just as much time to explain the grant to them or explain the project to them than to write it. One of the things the grant writer did write for us here was the Harbor Marine, the maritime facility. That was the grant writer. The $3.5 million for the fire facility and the $1 million was internally. The $465,000 was also internally. We had another grant that we applied for the generator. We did not get that grant. That was the grant writer. And one of the things Alice and I have put together, and we need to tweak it, is we thought it was important to get to the council all the grants we've applied for, all the ones we were successful, the ones we weren't successful. And we put the list together, and I was pleasantly surprised as to how comprehensive that list was. And you'll probably see that on the council agenda, if not in February, definitely March. Because we got some other ones and it's going to be a data mining thing where you can click on and put in awards and you get the awards and stuff like that. Because I think it's important that the public knows. We've been very successful with grants the last couple of years. I think we need to tell that story.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you. I think that's it for me.
Anybody have anything else? No? All right, then, thank you. Oh, yes. Sure. Keith?
Keith Stover, Beacon Hill Road, but you and Sosha asked, I think, a couple of thematically really important questions. And I should begin by saying, as a non-math person, I sort of view this document's important to me because it sort of paints a picture of the next, of the next several years, and that's kind of how I look at this. But Chris, you asked about the fire barn and the fire barn number. And I would just say a couple things about that. One is, that is a moving target for a number of reasons, not least of which is something that we've been talking to. The federal delegation has been immensely responsive on this, and with state government, because we are basically called to provide a public safety infrastructure that is way beyond what you would normally have in a town of this size, because we have to plan public safety infrastructure around peak populations in the summer, right? I mean, part of the reason that we have that, I believe at $3.5 million in the U.S. Senate Appropriations Bill is that Senators Reid and Whitehouse spent a lot of time here, particularly after the Harborside fire. We're sort of like, well, wait a second. There's no way you can ask a town of whatever, 1,200 people to foot the bill on a gigantic new fire barn. But one of the things that I've learned going through this process, and Mary Ann alluded to this, and I think Amy, I was quite frankly viewing this as a garage. Largely as a garage, because what do I know about how you build a firehouse, right? But it's much more than that. And back to my point about painting a picture, and the reason I want to speak is this is a number that's shockingly large to me. That doesn't mean it's a bad number. It doesn't mean that the number won't go up or go down, but it is a number that really sort of makes you gets you a little wide-eyed. And you should know, I have to say, I think Marian and Amy have done an extraordinary job of engaging with the fire department on this project, because the fire department quite appropriately wants what they need and what they think we're going to need. But just like when you're building a house, you got to have an architect, you got to have a contractor who says, maybe you don't need the $80,000 faucet. Maybe it's, a $5,000 faucet, that sort of thing. So while the number is shocking, I actually think the process is being refined every day. And I find that gratifying. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, just mention briefly, you mentioned a really critical point, and it's not unique here. You hear all the time, the town doesn't take care of its buildings. And if you go around to a lot of them, it's true. I actually think that's one of those hidden areas that there's been dramatic improvement over the last several years. And I give Tom Reesum a lot of credit for this, because he's actually got all of the buildings loaded into a software program so that maintenance is occurring much more regularly, much less as part of big projects that you would have to put in a capital plan. And I don't think it's 100% of the way there yet, because there's, quite frankly, there's tons of catching up that needs to be done, and that's where the big numbers come in. But I actually think it's getting better. So anyway, sorry, I came here to listen to the zoning changes, but I just wanted to add that stuff.
Don't apologize. Thank you. Anybody have anything else? All right, then I'll make the motion that in accordance with General Ordinance Chapter 2, Division 3, Capital Improvements, we approve the presented capital improvement plan as consistent with the Shoreham Comprehensive Plan, with the one suggestion of a narrative being included for the future years.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Mr. Brunig, you're up. So what we have next, number 2, I'll open the public hearing for the Town of New Shoreham, Block Island Water Company, Plat 9, Lot 12, fire number 426, Sands Pond Lane. Public hearing for development plan review for an application by the Block Island Water District for a special use permit under section 113AB1 and a variance from 306C for a 2-phase project at the water treatment site. The first phase will be an addition of a water storage tank that will store 256,000 gallons of treated water. The second phase involves the placement of a new reverse osmosis unit in the lower level of the west side of the building and adding a dormer to the second floor. This would be advisory to the zoning board. Have at it, John.
I was just here to support the pickleball court.
I knew you would.
Our David Petrarca, our legal counsel, is with us today, and I appreciate you guys making an exception for him to attend, as he has standing meetings on your guys' meetings as well with the Warwick zoning or planning board. So I don't know, David, do you take it from here pretty much?
I'll get it started. We'll quickly
Okay.
get back to you, John. Don't
Sure.
worry. Don't sit down, whatever you do. So for the record, my name is David Petracca. I'm an attorney with offices in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, and I am legal counsel to the New Shoreham Water District and the Board of Water Commissioners. We're here tonight or this afternoon, depending on your perspective, for a development plan review concerning a two-phase development, as the chair just read into the record. With me and who will be testifying on behalf of the district today is Mr. John Brunig, who is the water superintendent. And John, if you could please start with just a general overview. I know you had sort of the pre-meeting to set this public hearing in which you went through a lot of detail, but just so the public hearing record is complete, if you could give the Cliff Notes version of what's going on up at the water plant.
Sure. Yeah, we spoke for probably about a half hour last time about this project. But the project consists of, and why we're basically here is because we're putting up a large water storage tank, which goes over the height variance and I believe some lot coverage variance. So that's what's bringing us here. Of course, we talked about last time on a planning on a larger scale, besides the height of the building, providing more water for the town is business of the planning board in general, in my opinion. Yeah, we're basically, what's going on is we're running out of capacity in the summer months, and we have to act to keep up with not necessarily development, but with all of the aging wells within the water district. Is one of the biggest factors of this. As we know, there are many large hotels, marinas, and everything that are still on private wells. And we're trying to get this done before another well goes down, which has already happened, over the last several years. So that's what we're here for. The other thing is that we're hoping to put a dormer on the east wing of the building, because we're basically kicking out ourselves of where we actually work, and we need other space for storage, and we're basically bursting at the seams right now. The facility is pretty small for what it does. So we're trying to add additional space for storage, offices and such upstairs, because what's going to be down there is going to be now a treatment area. So I think that pretty much covers it. The big thing is the tank, though. It's it's fairly large and tall. You guys have been up there and seen the other ones. A little bit wider, and as we discussed last time, the heights will all be the same, because hydraulically it's difficult to have tanks that are at different heights. So when it comes to height, it'll be lower, but the heights on the top will all be the same.
John, would it be helpful to visually show that? I happen to have that handy.
If the board wants to see the plans, that's you can't screen share, so it's fine. They have the plans, David, and
I do have the plan. We
Yeah.
have the plans.
Yeah.
We saw
Okay.
that.
We saw them
Yeah.
actually at the last meeting as well.
Yep. Yeah.
If anybody wants.
Okay. So John, here at Development Plan Review, one of the things we have to do is show consistency in how this project will support the town's comprehensive plan. So as you were probably aware, you probably were part of the drafting back in 2016, at least that update. Chapter 9 deals with public water, pages 9-6 through 9-8. Needless to say, you would agree this is a system improvement.
Absolutely, yes.
Just pulling up my notes on a different screen here. And as mentioned in the comprehensive plan, there's already reverse osmosis treatment. This is going the inside portion that is going to eventually result in the new dormer, but that's going to result in another reverse osmosis treatment in the downstairs. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay. And overall, you would agree that these upgrades would help with not only supplying water, but also fire protection?
yes, yes. And we, obviously, the incident from the summer with the harbor side, really makes that paramount. The fact that we could provide about 2.5 to 3 hours of fire protection, this would almost double that amount of time fighting a fire.
Yeah, so needless to say, as mentioned in the comprehensive plan, this is further planning for emergencies and providing more redundant backup in case an emergency were to arise, such as the Harborside fire.
Yes.
Likewise, we currently have a wait list for development and new water hookups. Is that correct?
Yes, there's we're issuing conditional water allocation at this point. And when these, if this project goes forward and when it goes forward, we will start issuing additional water allocations.
Okay, and as you may be aware, Chapter 7 of the comprehensive plan deals with economic development. Are a good portion of those water allocation wait list applicants part of commercial or other economic ventures?
It's a sprinkle of both. It's some people who are on wells who want to get on town water, and some new development, commercial and residential. Also the one of the most important is the West Side affordable housing project that's trying to get underway as well.
Well, you anticipated my question about the housing chapter, so there we go. Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't already discussed? But I'm trying to keep this compact for everybody since everyone's heard most of this before.
No, I think that's good. I think we hit up most things, and we talked about it at length at the last meeting. So
I have nothing further. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions? No? Anybody from the public? Keith? You're the public. All right, then I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and take the matter under advisement.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, and no more discussion? Then I can make a motion, right? Then I will make the motion to grant a favorable advisory to the zoning board for development plan review for an application by the Block Island Water District for a special use permit under sections 113A and B1 and a variance from 306C for a two-phase project at the water treatment site. Findings of fact is the first phase would be an addition of a water storage tank that will store 256,000 gallons of treated water. And the second phase involves the placement of a new reverse osmosis unit in the lower level of the west side of the building and a dormer on the second floor.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Motion approved. Thank you.
okay. On a procedural note, I have to come back to zoning, Jen, for a
Yes.
public hearing next. Okay, but I have to come back to zoning to plan for that public hearing, or do we just set that? Oh, in March. All right, March. All right. Okay, we'll look it up. I'll be in touch with you. Okay, all right, I'll be in touch with you. So that's the next step.
And thank
Awesome.
you all
Hey.
again for the accommodation. I have to move to a different room now for the Warwick Planning Board meeting this evening. I greatly appreciate, again, just working through everyone's schedule here. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Stay well.
Okay. Next item is amendments to the New Shoreham zoning ordinance and land development and subdivision regulations for compliance with state law. Review draft amendments and make recommendations to the town council, including finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan. Our consultant Weston and Sampson is here. So the first item is zoning ordinance, section 113, nonconformance substandard lots.
Good evening. If I could interrupt for just one moment.
Yeah.
The procedure for subdivision subdivision regulation amendments is such that the planning board can vote to amend them. So you are actually going to be considering these amendments to your subdivision regulations, and then you will vote yay or nay. You do not need to make a recommendation to the council like you would for a zoning amendment.
No, I'm confused. I thought,
We would just be scheduling the public hearing based on the language. You're still gonna review the language and
Oh.
then I would advertise it. You would hold the public hearing just like the town council does on the zoning amendment.
Dan, could you turn your mic on for me?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I have a lot of paperwork here.
Yeah.
All right. Now, are we looking at? I have one from Jen Brady, zoning official, dated February 12th.
Mhm.
And I have others dated. It's either December or January. Which one are we gonna look at? I mean, I have one right here in front of me that's substandard lot, and I've read through it. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Right, so in terms of procedure, anything that is a zoning ordinance amendment. The planning board role for zoning ordinance amendments is to make a recommendation to the council. A zoning ordinance amendment then goes to the council with that recommendation, and the council takes it up and votes to approve it or not.
oh,
When we're talking about subdivision regulations, the planning board is the board that decides yes or no to adopt. You adopt your own subdivision regs, the council adopts zoning ordinances.
okay.
So this
So-
number one is zoning, so we can, okay.
That's right.
Oh, boy. So this substandard lot, if I am correct, has some big implications if particularly for Block Island, because as I understand it, the purpose of this as it was presented by the state, or what the implications it would have, would mean higher lot coverage, lower setbacks. And I don't know how this would be consistent with our comprehensive plan as,
So if I could just kind of set the stage on this one. So there was a change to the state law. And it did in fact create a situation where if you have an existing substandard lot, you're exactly right. You get an automatic reduction in setbacks and you get an automatic increase in building coverage based on a calculation that's described in the statute. Your zoning official very smartly brought up some issues with doing that. Both in your town because of the number of substandard lots that you do have, especially in the RA zone. And also because I believe, and I don't want to speak for Jen, but I believe also because you do have some language in your ordinance now that creates a bit of a sticky situation when somebody comes in with a substandard lot. So it might make sense at this point. That's the state law. That's what we're dealing with. You want to make sure that your zoning ordinance comes into compliance with that and deals with the issue that's been identified. So I think at this point, it might make sense to have Jen, if she doesn't mind, just kind of giving us an overview of what has been drafted, and then maybe we can talk about it on the back end.
okay, so Jen, this memo from you from the 12th.
So I just wrote you this memo to point out the accommodations you've already provided the substandard lots, which is reducing the setbacks based on a formula of lot depth and lot frontage. And then also, undersized lots have a higher percentage of allowable building lot coverage. So it depends on the lot size. So it was building lots over 25 or less than 25,000 square feet, 5%. And then higher, obviously, in the RVs.
So
I just pointed out those accommodations.
those,
that
so
are
the
already in play.
the accommodations, I guess my question is, some of this wording is struck out?
So my suggestion was just to remove it or at least discuss it.
Right.
Whether or not you would like to remove it.
So let's just take that for instance, for just discussion purposes, building lots, because this is kind of tricky for me to wrap my head around. So we have substandard lots, and I think the way the state has it written, you can have
So anything
So-
under 120,000 square feet would be a substandard lot in that residential AZ.
right, and the potential for lot coverage is percentage wise could be what?
Well, if you had a substandard lot of 33,000 square feet, based on the formula, you would have a lot building coverage of 6.88%.
Okay,
By right, without going into zoning boards.
by
Just
right,
to-
okay.
Yeah, just coming into my office and doing calculations.
Sorry, just to back up, I'm just confused about what, and I'm sorry, but what is required by the state at the moment and what we actually are able to debate? And can you just
Yeah, that would be.
give us a
question
little
for
bit, because
Karen.
I just want to know what we should be
Karen,
discussing.
do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so what is required at the state level is a new statute effective January 1. It's 45-24-38. And it says that, and I'll summarize, I won't read word for word. But it says that if you have a lot that fails, it's titled substandard lots of record. So if you have a lot that exists that is substandard, meaning it fails to meet the minimum lot size requirements of the district. So if it's a 3-acre minimum lot size and you have a lot that is 2 acres, that would be a substandard lot. It does not meet the minimum lot size requirement. In that case, as of January 1, the statute says that setbacks, frontage, and or lot width requirements for a structure shall be reduced and the maximum building coverage requirement shall be increased. And then there's a calculation to determine that. It's based on the proportion of the lot area of the substandard lot to the minimum requirement in the district. So kind of setting that calculation aside for a second, what it's saying is that automatically as of January 1, lots that are substandard automatically get a calculation-based reduction in their setbacks. So if you had a 20-foot front setback or a 5-foot front setback, that and you're on a substandard lot, that setback just got pushed further. So you're increasing the building envelope. You're increasing the area on that lot that you can build. And it also will increase your maximum building coverage automatically when the calculation is applied. So what does that mean? That means you can cover more of the lot than you otherwise could. So what you're doing is, because New Shoreham has a significant number of substandard lots, you want to make sure that when when bringing your zoning ordinance into compliance with this new state law, that the effects of doing that are thought out, that there aren't any additional issues that doing that is going to raise. This is because, again, this is an issue that comes up for you quite often just due to the number of substandard lots that you have.
So
But-
Karen, so we already have standards in place for substandard lots.
So, yeah, just to give a overview, the town of New Shoreham has had something in place, currently where it used to be optional. So some communities may have had something in their regs that allowed, that accommodated substandard lots and allowed for those reductions. So the concern is that, now we have to have the state law language in there, and so we need to consider, do we eliminate the current provisions for that, so that it's not, how that's gonna interact, you know? Whether or not you take out the current accommodation and put in the state law language. Otherwise, could you have both at the same time, and how that would play out with having even greater amount of relief from the regs for those substandard lots?
Well,
And
that's
then
kind of,
the other thing to consider, I'm sorry, Jen, I spoke over you.
Sorry, I brought an example just to show you, if you have a lot that's 12,000 square feet in the RA zone, based on the calculations at 5%, because that's what's currently in the ordinance for lots under 25,000 square feet, that would be 9.48%. If we go back to the 4%, it would be 7.58. So they still get an increase in the building lot coverage. It's just not as
so that's with the existing. What about if we adopt what the
existing
state?
is 9.48. 9.48.
But if we adopt the state, it is,
No, that's,
oh, that's what it is
yes,
now.
it's
I'm
because
sorry.
we
I
have
keep
that.
forgetting it exists right now. because
We
it's after
have,
January 1.
So I don't understand why we,
accommodation already in
Okay.
place.
So we can't keep the accommodation we have in place, but we have to adopt the state, but we don't. What's the consensus at the table is my feeling is what the state allows is
yeah,
is a little
I-
much.
So you do
Or-
have a couple of options. So you do have to adopt the state.
yeah,
But,
of course, right.
but you could either amend some of the language in your ordinance to possibly give you other protections, or I don't know what that would be. That would have to come from you all and your planner and your staff. You know, one other option that I understand is possible from talking to some other towns actually is to reduce the minimum lot size. So if you had in the RA zone a 3-acre minimum lot, that means you have several hundred, as I understand it, lots that are substandard. If you were to reduce that minimum lot size from 3 acres to say 2 acres, now you have made hundreds of lots in conformance. They're no longer substandard. Therefore, they wouldn't get this automatic reduction. So I'm not offering one or the other. I'm just saying that your job with regards to this state statute is to figure out the best way to adopt it, but also protect the town and the number of substandard lots that you have. I think the concern would be to have an overdevelopment on small lots. You would have small lots that maybe couldn't have that much development, now have a broader footprint to build and can cover more of the lot. And if that's something that is of concern, then we need to talk about that. We need to figure out a way to address it.
But if you change the standard for what is a substandard lot, you are also immediately increasing the zoning opportunities for construction on all lots. For example, if right now, if you can only build on a 3-acre lot and you have a 2-acre lot for sale or available that would be considered substandard in the past, but will not be substandard now, then I don't see anybody stopping from having multiple building lots being subdivided into 2-acre building lots. So I think it's a two-edged sword. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it would increase the development potential of larger lots to,
So
yeah.
what
that's-
you think
that's-
you're gaining
yeah.
on one end, you're losing at the other by doing that.
Right, that's why it's a policy decision that needs to be thoroughly considered.
Well, and I guess the frustration is like we have a system in place that's not broken, but we got to abandon it
No choice.
and adopt the state. But we got to figure out how to amend the state. And my amendment to it would be to adopt what we already have, but we can't do that.
Can't
So, And yeah,
Yeah. Probably pick one or the, I mean, unless you don't want that option and you would like the 5% to be applied for lots under 25%, but then it's also reduced.
For other
according
lots
to the
as
new
well?
State law, so
Uh-huh.
it's, and then setbacks, like I figured out the setbacks for a property that was before the zoning board, and it was like 5 feet. And by right, that's
Mhm.
what they're gonna
Mhm.
get, so.
I think,
so I guess when I'm looking at the memo with a lot of this language is struck out. But let's cut right to residential A zone RAC dimensional standards. And we have building lots less than 25,000 square feet, 5%, building lots greater than or equal to 25,000 square feet, 4%, but less than 34,000 square feet. That's all struck out. Additional lot coverage requirements are all struck out, and it just goes right to maximum lot coverage of 10%. Is that? But it maintains the existing setbacks. This is what's confusing for me.
No, for the setbacks, that's under 113E. So your substandard lots of record. That's where the language is, for reducing the setbacks. So if we remove that.
Yeah.
And then remove the RB and RA zone as far as the increase, like to 5, from 5, go back down to 4, they're still getting, you're still following state law, so it's still the maximum lot building coverage for a substandard lot would be increased.
right. Could somebody tell me or review for me what the rulings are regarding what makes for buildable land, for example? Is the state still requiring that CRMC's regulations, or are they overriding them?
Don't understand that question.
Yeah, I'm not trying.
Setbacks are. Yeah, okay. All right.
Come into effect of the city unless they've changed it.
Okay, never mind.
Anybody have any other questions?
No.
Because at this
Ashley,
point,
maybe Ashley, you looked at this for us this week and this came up later. We were kind of focused on the subdivision regs between last meeting and today. So this came up just the end of last week, and Ashley took a look at it this week and prepared that draft. And then, Jen looked at it also, and you have her draft and notes on it. But so I don't know, Ashley, if there's anything at this point you weigh in on, like what your thoughts are when you reviewed our section and your recommendation as far as, does it make sense to, obviously we're going to incorporate the state law, but our existing, regs on this, issue would be probably needing to be stricken. Otherwise it would be confusing and also might, exacerbate the bonus, being provided, right?
the
Yeah,
double
so
dip.
when we looked at this, the concern was because the state has now mandated how the proportional reduction is calculated, that if you had your own reduction as well, that you may end up with an argument that somebody could do both. And so obviously you don't want to allow that to happen. And that your formula for reducing the requirements for a substandard lot don't comport with the new state mandated way of doing it, which is very prescriptive and says that this is the formula, and it's essentially a proportional reduction of the setbacks and a proportional increase of the building lot coverage. So we had to strike your language that exists, even though you have a mechanism. it's no longer compliant with the state laws prescriptive, formula for how this is calculated. And I can't speak to Jen's comments. I don't have a copy of her memo or markup. I just have the copy that we provided. But essentially what we did there was take out your language, replace that with language that complies with the state law's mechanism. I would say there's probably not a whole lot of ways around this because it is so prescriptive. Two things that I'm aware of is, I think one of them, and I think this can be an effective tool if you take the time, you'd have to take the time to go, I think, district by district and areas within districts to look at where do you have the most nonconformance, what is the average lot size in those nonconforming areas, and can you reduce the minimum lot size in a way that makes these lots not non-conforming, but also doesn't offset the benefit of doing that by opening up additional development opportunities beyond what, the town is comfortable with in those particular areas. And so I do think it would, I don't think you can just blanket district by district, make those changes. You'd need to kind of surgically go in there and look at areas within the districts to be able to do that effectively. But that is a way to offset this requirement.
I did do that, and the accommodation, like the increase in building lot coverage for substandard lots was voted on maybe like 10 years ago. So it is in the RB and RA zone. The other zones haven't been changed as far as building lot coverage. So that's why we were kind of focused on that, because those changes took place, I would say, the past 10 years.
So I would say, this being a bigger discussion, we need to move forward with the state law, implementing the zoning for the state law requirements. And this, again, this concept of kind of counteracting the impacts of that through potentially reductions in the minimum lot size is something we can continue to pursue and study, even as those regs are getting implemented and up for hearing, but as a next step, not to delay implementing the state law changes. But, we started looking at what, mapping analysis at substandard lots. I mean, this just today. So this is all kind of just starting the analysis on that. I think it's going to obviously need more discussion and analysis, but looking at, you have the RA, which covers a lot of the town. But I think what Ashley's saying is, even sections within the RA, right? You could, if you see that there's a lot of substandard lots within that zoning, that area of the zoning district, maybe just reducing it there versus over, the entire island. So, but again, that analysis will take a little bit more consideration and time, and not something we want to necessarily rush, to implement.
Well, Allison,
Yes, go ahead.
there's two things. One, these changes that I'm looking at aren't in place, and the changes that the state have are in place. And I guarantee there's already impact to what's, like, there are people out here that are very savvy as to what the state is allowing. And I haven't asked, but I don't even want to know how many applications are there. So I'm I don't want to wait. And you and Jen have put the work in. Jen's submitted this memo. You've looked at it, Karen. The memo that the zoning official has given us has some changes that I think are important to adopt, and then the work can continue, if that makes sense. But I think we need to adopt this tonight.
I think that's what Allison meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Allison, is that what you meant?
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
We need
okay.
to move forward on state law,
Yeah.
implement state law changes, and
Okay.
then while considering, as a next step, other policy changes that are beyond what's required by state law, but something that locally we might want to do to protect, our town, the local regs, and what, what we think is best in a way to counteract those potential negative impacts.
Okay.
But so those are zoning, so that would be going as a recommendation to the town council, who would hold the public hearing, whereas the rest are subdivision changes that are in your package. So
Keith, you have something?
so you're saying voting, you feel comfortable like moving forward with that? We can finalize some of the language there, but conceptually, taking out the current modification and then putting in the state law.
And then we probably need to add Ashley, her merger information, because I didn't touch any of that. So we'll maybe merge the two documents and then submit it to the town council.
Yeah.
My sense is just to sort of, so everybody's kind of same page, or at least has the same information. I've been on 2 or 3 calls and had meetings and conversations over the last 5 days, let's say week, where some of these ideas, for example, making more, figuring out a way to have fewer non-conforming lots, for example,
Right.
which has intended consequences and potentially unintended consequences. But I think it's important to do the state law change, but then, and I'm sorry, Allison and Karen and Ashley, but then as quickly as possible, I would hope that for your next planning meeting, you have a couple of options about how to mitigate the impact, or print this on a t-shirt, restore local control. These decisions. How is that, Jen? But it struck me, I was on a call actually this week with Karen, and I served on zoning for probably 4 years. I've served on the council for a few years, and my head is spinning by the time I get off these calls. So which makes me more conservative than, it makes me feel like, I don't know, there's a lot of push me, pull you. So I don't know whether that's reasonable, Allison and Karen, but one of the things is, this 2 acres idea. Maybe there are others, but I would imagine planning would want to look at an option or two and really vet with you, and particularly Jen, who I think knows where the application, sort of generally where the applications would come from, so that you can really kind of game plan it. But quickly, because I think we do have an open window risk here, right? I mean, that's the other side of this. It's like, we're gonna take this leap of faith, implement the state rules, but theoretically we may be leaving a window open until the planning board and the town council act on restoring local control. So that's why I was pressing on the time side of this, Allison. I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you. Anybody have any other comments or questions?
The only comment I have is generic. Do these documents, when we finalize them, do they go to a public hearing?
So this particular one's going to zoning, right? Or we're gonna
No,
make a recommendation to the town.
Your recommendation, your motion would be to recommend to or a favorable recommendation to the town council.
Okay, so I'll try to be more
Then
specific.
we will also send the language, they advertise it for 3 weeks in the paper, the town clerk does, and then they hold a public hearing.
Okay, so mine is very simple. I recommend that any document that's handed out at a public hearing for public information purposes be color coded, so that red are state regulations and anything else that that are our own regulations that are not in conflict with the state regulations be left in black?
That would be a task for Allison because she drafts the ordinance. So
It's so simple when it's color coded, so that you don't sit there and think, oh, can I change this? But is that a state change or is that a local adjustment? You know what I mean?
I can't speak to that. It would be for Allison.
Okay, that's just my recommendation.
Jen, do you need a motion for each one? Like you want,
Do you want to
Need a
go
motion.
through? So are there questions, the subdivision regs before you make, when you said each one? So we've only talked so far through the substandard lots.
Allison, I'm gonna go bullet by
Oh,
bullet.
Okay, yeah,
that's
so
okay.
you're just speaking to this one. Okay,
I'm
I thought
speaking
you were
to,
going
yeah.
to, okay, I understand now, I
Yeah,
understand.
zoning ordinance, section 113, because,
The other ones you're not recommending to the town council. You're discussing.
right, and some of them still we might get on different discussions with other ones. So, so this first zoning ordinance, section 113, non-conformance, substandard lots, I'll make a motion to forward the language drafted by Jen and Allison and Karen to the town council when it's ready.
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Seems like we're just like, we don't have a choice. We've got to take the lesser of two evils, it sounds like. And if we have more time, then down the road, we can make changes to this if we need to, or modifications, Allison.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks.
I have-
The next bullet is development plan review.
Chris, I have a quick
Yep.
question. Allison, do we have an inventory of lots that fit into this category, or Jen?
Well, within the GIS, what do you mean by an inventory of any substandard lots? You can do the analysis. I mean, we have our parcel layer in the GIS, so there's a calculation of the lot size. And then you can select, any whatever lot size that you're looking to come up with a calculation or analysis on.
That would be the first step.
Yeah, I was just curious.
My guess
How
is
many?
about
And where?
75% are substandard lots. That's my guess. It's
That
not
much?
based on any actual data.
I'll give,
I'm
I
guessing.
just today, did
Uh-huh.
that analysis, so that's something, we can share with the planning board, for next meeting.
Okay,
But-
thank you.
That would be an impact to what, how many lots would be impacted by this? Is that what you're kind of asking?
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually a good question.
Yeah, how many lots are considered substandard based on your, 120,000 square feet, within, so I mean, you have your total lots within RA, and then I took out any, conserved lots, any, government owned lots, and then from there, grouped it by lot size to give you those numbers.
And it would
Was it
also,
a high percentage?
Will
Yes.
we see that next time?
More than
Yes.
75%, would you say?
I didn't calculate the percentage. I have a number. I have a, I mean, I can try to pull it up right now. I have
I'm just curious.
this was
because-
just a,
Mm-hmm.
And
internal
now would it-
working document. I just started this today, so,
I would imagine it also changes the 2015 build-out map numbers.
well, yeah, so I know from the comp plan, our build out analysis is
Mhm.
related and could be updated and factored in, utilized for this study as
Right.
well, but
Right.
there's let's see, 1,187 lots within the RA zoning district that are not conserved or, owned by a government entity. And then, there was 905 substandard lots and 282 above the 120 square feet. So
All right. And
a
we'll be
very
able
high
to
percentage.
So that would be a good starting point from.
Sure.
Thanks,
so.
Allison.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
So development plan review.
Pretty close.
What's that? You were close.
75% would be
Yeah.
890. 995. Pretty good guess. That's 15 lots.
Good for you, Jen.
Very, very proud of myself.
Development plan
So,
review.
yeah, Ashley, do you want to go over like just kind of the broad, like what's DPR changes, like significant
please.
changes within these sections?
Yep. That'd be
So
great.
you're still looking at zoning, right? On the development plan review?
Thought we were at
Or are
subdivision.
you
We
reg.
looking at the subdivision
reviewing.
now?
No, we're not.
We don't have anything for development plan review for this month.
Oh, okay,
That
we're
on
still,
next month.
all right, the minor, why don't we do that? We were still making changes to DPR. We've been working on that, so.
Okay, so we could go to subdivision regulations, section
Yeah.
308.
Subdivision regs
Okay.
that are, yeah. That was circulated in your packet.
Unified
So-
development review.
Okay. So
me
Ashley, if you
just-
just want to explain what, again, what Unified Development Review is, just quick
Yep.
overview of like kind of the section and why we're making these changes.
So in the zoning ordinance amendments that you've passed on, you'll probably remember that we had a unified development review section there. That was essentially authorizing unified development review as a process for the town. And then what you have in front of you in the subdivision regulations is the section that governs how a unified development review process happens, essentially. And so this lays out at what stage of review when you have unified development review, and just as a quick reminder, that's when you have a development project in front of you as the planning board, and that application also requires either a variance or a special use permit. You now review that as part of your land development application. That does not go to the zoning board anymore. And so what this section does is essentially lays out how that process happens and how you play a role in that process as part of a land development application.
Were
Thank
there
you.
any, did the planning board have any questions on this section?
No, I don't see the debate.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else?
No.
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 Seems to have kind of streamlined this a little bit. All right.
Right.
Does that need a
Yes,
motion
if you want to make a motion, sure.
to recommend? I'll make a motion to forward the subdivision.
Oh, wait, so no, you're actually,
Adopting.
We'll
no,
advertise them
no
for,
public hearing. We have to
All right.
advertise,
Okay.
so do you want to make a motion? Advertise it? We don't usually do.
I'll make a motion to advertise and hold the public hearing.
Set the public hearing for.
How long do you need?
Well, see,
That's 45, isn't it 45 days? So what we could do it,
I mean, I think it's gonna be pretty tight to make the March 13th meeting,
so we'll do April.
so April
What's the date? Hold the public hearing in April.
10th.
So I'll make a motion to hold a public hearing in April 10th for section 308 Unified Development Review.
Yeah, because if not, I would have to advertise everything by Friday.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bullet, minor subdivision, Article 7. Are we doing that one today?
Yep.
I have,
yes.
I have it right here. Anybody want to give us the bullet notes on this one? Cause I got it right here.
So I can give you the brief overview. Is essentially we've taken your existing section on minor subdivision and land development and made the amendments necessary to make it comply with the new state law requirements, where minor applications for both subdivision and for land development projects are done administratively unless there is a street creation or extension or unified development review is triggered, at which point that would push the application to the planning board. And this outlines all of that within this section as to when it stays administrative, when it kicks up to the planning board and how that's handled.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions on this one?
No.
No.
Because I am. Can you explain the trigger again that goes up? I'm trying to find it. I thought I had my.
So there's two possible triggers. One is that the application involves a street creation or extension that automatically requires a public hearing, and that pushes the application to the purview of the planning board. The threshold for what's considered a minor subdivision has changed from 5 lots or less to 9 lots or less. And if any of the lot creation or land development application requires either a variance or a special use permit, that triggers a public hearing requirement. It triggers unified development review, and only the planning board can do unified development review. So the administrative officer would push that application to the planning board.
Thank you, Ashley. I am good with this. Anybody else have any questions?
No.
No.
Okay, then I will make a motion for a public hearing for April 10th for Article 7, minor LD and subdivision. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Objections? None? Thank you. Bullet number 5. It's Article 8, major LD and subdivision.
Same idea here as the minor. This actually changed even less than the other sections you've been looking at, but we've just made it consistent. Major subdivisions and land development applications go through the same process that they always have. And it stays at the purview of the planning board. Major applications are not reviewed by the administrative officer. I'll say the significant change that's worth mentioning is that not in the subdivision portion, but in the land development side of it, that there is now a clear definition for what is a minor land development, and anything over the triggers for a minor automatically becomes a major land development. The one other significant difference is that your public hearing no longer happens at the preliminary plan stage of review. This now occurs at the master plan stage of review, and what you previously knew as a public informational meeting no longer exists.
Oh.
Is that a good
I
or
do
bad
have a
thing?
question here.
That's a big misstep, isn't it?
Um,
And I guess my question is, it's a big
We missed
misstep,
that.
but why is that step? Why is the absence of that step necessary, other than that's what the state does?
So my understanding is the thinking behind this is to have the public hearing at an earlier stage of review so that the public's concerns can be incorporated into preliminary plan design. If you hear from the public at a conceptual level, then you can ask the applicant to incorporate some of that, and before the hard engineering takes place. So that happens at the public hearing portion. And I think in practice, there was no real difference between a public informational meeting and a public hearing. It was probably advertising was the only, and notification was the only real difference there. So now your public hearing is going to happen at the master plan stage of review, and at the preliminary plan stage, there is no public hearing requirement, but there is a requirement that there's notification to abutters. So this creates a circumstance where the abutters are still going to get notified that there's a preliminary application. The big difference is that it's not technically called a public hearing, but every planning board in the state of Rhode Island that I'm aware of would operate under the same premise that they typically do, which is that if it's an application on an agenda, regardless of whether it's classified as a public hearing or not, they do not deny the public the right to speak. So although we're calling it differently and the technicality of it is different. I think in practice, it will continue to operate the way it always has, which is that people will get notified and the planning boards will allow people to speak. Certainly can't imagine a situation where the planning board enforces a requirement to notify abutters, and then when the abutters show up at the preliminary plan, they're told, I'm sorry, it's not a public hearing, you can't talk. That's just not gonna happen.
Okay.
Okay.
That's kind of what I wanted to know is there's an opportunity for the public or abutters to voice their opinion that's actually earlier in the process.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so the public hearing will happen earlier in the process and it's up to each board and commission to say, it's not a public hearing, but obviously we're going to let the public speak.
I kind of like it, frankly. Gives me more input before I make up my mind on something. I have a question for everybody. I would like to see at any kind of developmental plan review, a requirement of the applicant to print the appropriate storm tool maps. It's a little early, in my opinion, to mandate that they follow those storm tool maps, perhaps, but I'd like to see proof that they are part of the application so that they know and show us that they know the risk of flooding of their property.
I guess that's probably something we could add into the checklist, right, Ashley? I mean, that seems like.
I would love
Yeah.
that. I see it, first it was me just saying it, I'm saying it to them verbally. Please take a look at the storm tools. I think it should be part
Yes.
of our record.
I think that
Yes.
checklist is in our subdivision regs, so we
Yeah.
might need to amend that.
Those will all be, those are all gonna be
I think-
updated, so, we can put it on as, right at the beginning, I would recommend as the checklist, the first,
Isn't there a couple things on the
for
checklist that actually
massive-
have like there are items that are on the checklist, but there are no is it ordinances to support it or I know there's
Could look at.
Priestley always has a couple that
There's a couple for zoning.
don't
Like that
that are
pond
there, but
quality, yeah.
we don't there's no teeth behind it or there's no like I don't know why
That's
we're
the
even
zoning
asking for them.
ordinance.
Is it zoning?
Yeah.
Okay.
That will
Okay.
be cleaned up. Yeah.
Okay.
But the good thing is a lot of that's gonna be cleaned up. So yeah, you'll have fresh new checklists that are, eliminate some of those.
By the
Yeah.
way, remember we were worried
Mhm.
about language that was too vague, like
Yes.
the character of the island. That term is no longer allowed. I saw a nice substitution for that in this language here. Information on the natural and built features of the surrounding neighborhood. That's a nice way that they approve that. That's a nice way to describe the character of the neighborhood or the character of the island, in my opinion.
Well, Margie will be happy. Any other questions for Article 8?
No.
I have a question. kind
Mary?
of Similar to Sosha, I think it's, let's see, where is it? It's like on page 4, 805 of the preliminary, apparently I can't say that word, plan review.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, maybe this is a question for both of you on Zoom here, Allison, and I think it's, section C. I was just curious in the section C, part 2, all permits required by state or federal agencies, including permits related to freshwater, wetlands, the coastal zone, floodplains, preliminary suitability for individual septic disposal systems, public water systems, et cetera. Are we allowed to put another thing on that list? I was surprised not to see coastal risks, coastal hazards, coastal erosion, groundwater table rise, or do we just accept what's on that list? That's 805 of the preliminary plan review.
So under 805
Section C.
C.
Yeah.
If your question is, can anything be added?
It's-
Added to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I always thought that you could make something less restrictive, but not more restrictive than the state or federal government. Is that correct?
I just felt like the words weren't strong enough, floodplain, but if it's
So
so
I'll-
right, we can't make any changes, but.
So
was
I don't
surprised-
think you can make changes to that language because that language does specifically come from the state law. What you can do is require other items in your checklist. This is
Okay.
being called out in the text of the regulations because they're specified in state law. But the law does enable the municipalities to create their own checklists. And so if you have other items that you'd like to add, you can add those through the checklist.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Mary, could you list those again, or do you want to
Sure, I can listen.
email those? or-
I can
Go ahead.
email, whatever, Allison. I'll email them to you. Do we have one more question on
We can
that?
Mary,
incorporate
you
that
have one more?
into the draft checklist for everyone to review.
Okay. Oh, yeah, again, on that same Article 8, Chris, thanks. In 803 Master Plan Review, Section B, I also wondered, Allison, why sea level rise committee wasn't listed in there. But I know it's not a state mandatory committee, but it is something that's active here. You know, where they list town engineer, building official, land use development, land use department, public works director, fire, police, conservation commission.
Or
Interesting.
potential members of the TRC?
Yeah, or potential members of sea level rise. I just think it's coming up a lot for us, as you know, Allison, where we're
Look for
looking
comment.
to, you know,
Yeah.
dovetail more with all of those departments in.
I think it
town.
says included but not limited to though, Mary. So that could be. Right?
So we could add that then.
Where at the
803D.
end of that? I missed that, Chris.
Included but not limited to, and then it lists all of those.
So we
Am I
can
reading the
add-
right
Yeah,
thing?
no, you're right. Yep. So we can add, is that what you're saying, Chris?
It sounds like it. It says
Yeah.
not limited to.
Yeah.
Right?
We could send it to the preschool teacher if we want.
I think it's a good suggestion.
Always, they always matter.
I think it's a good
Okay.
suggestion, Mary.
All right, I'll email that to you too, Allison.
So, yeah, I have it, the noted. Yep.
All right.
All right, then I will make a motion to forward to the wording for the changes to Article 8, Major LD and subdivision to the town council.
You're not
Um,
reporting to the town council on this one.
You're setting a public hearing.
These will
Setting
go
the
to-
public hearing for April 10th. Thank you. Any questions? Nope, I don't need any more questions. May I have a
Second.
Second, please. Thank you. So, all in favor?
I'm so sorry. Can
Nope, Claire. Claire, you can stick a question in there.
Slip one in. I just, after going over the substandard and getting worried about double dipping and stuff, exactly how long do these need to be posted, advertised? Cause I just 45. Okay, so we definitely couldn't fit it in
I'm sorry.
for. Oh, no. I was just making sure that April is definitely the earliest we could do, cause all of a sudden I'm getting really nervous about things slipping in.
April, it would be only subdivision rights for the
Okay.
substandard lots. That goes to the town council.
Yeah, no, sorry, I am,
Are you-
am just talking about the subdivision regulations. We can't do those in March. We don't have enough
Um,
time to post.
I have to send it to the newspaper on Friday.
Okay, so in 2 days.
Because then it would be advertised on the 23rd, the 1st, and the 8th.
Am I being ready? I just am like so nervous that something is
Well,
gonna slip.
If it's 45
Those
days.
aren't
Fair
the
enough.
substandard lot ones.
That's.
No, I know, but I'm worried that there are implications to those. But if I'm being silly.
I
you
mean,
can say.
I think that, are you saying for the subdivision regs
Mhm.
specifically?
Mhm.
I mean, if something comes in to my office, I would send it to Allison and Karen. We would discuss the process. according to state law, so.
We have
So
to follow
state
state
law would
we have to
still
follow
take
state
effect.
law. Yeah.
Right.
And we're not really changing anything with state law, so,
So, I mean.
Okay,
and
great.
That
Thank
will
you.
happen, that has happened, so you'll see that next month.
okay. Yeah, I just don't want to be in a position where we're having to approve something that we don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I,
And thinking to ourselves, gosh, if we had done this in March, then we wouldn't be seeing this.
well, I don't know what we would still be following state law, the staff would still follow state law as far as the process goes. So I'm not sure what would be different if you pass it or.
Right.
All right, I just, if there is the possibility to put it in March, I'm just feeling
I
like,
get all of the language from Allison, from Ashley, from Karen, if everything is ready to go before Friday, I can
I
send
just,
it to the
I don't know
paper,
that we've
but-
had many changes.
Right, so I don't know if,
Right.
that's why.
I just would like to, make my opinion known that I would like this done kind of as quickly as we can. so that we can-
Unless I scheduled a special meeting, but if that's the case, you would have to amend the motions to pick a date and.
Well, no, I'm saying, I'm not suggesting a special meeting. I'm
Okay.
suggesting we get them
As fast as
Done.
possible, yeah.
so that we can have them at our March meeting if possible.
That's still less than 45 days.
So
I'm not,
I'll just,
5 days, I
I
have to
thought it was
advertise it for
advertised.
3 weeks.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was
So-
45.
So
Not
it's
to
only-
my knowledge.
Okay.
But I can double check that.
Yeah.
We don't usually do, we've only done a few zone, subdivision amendments, so. You know,
I always thought it was.
but it
45.
is it's a deadline, for the paper.
Yeah.
It's like
Yep.
It's usually today.
really far in advance, so, I just don't wanna,
All right, I just,
and with Monday being a holiday. Yeah, I
so.
think we're better off.
So I guess I'm just bringing this up to say that I would love our motion to be, if possible, set for the March meeting. But if,
Which one? Because we've just made
So
4.
I- Ashley did have her hand up,
the
but I also.
just
can
the
step in.
subdivisions.
What's
I
that,
was
Allison?
just gonna offer that it's 3 weeks of advertising, including the week of the meeting. Three consecutive weeks.
Am I a robot? Are you a robot?
So then,
Right, so I don't think that. I would make-
so including so
The week of the meeting.
We could, so there is some cleanup to do. I know we've had a couple different versions and a few of us editing things, so there's a lot of like kind of cleanup formatting before it's like ready to go. But in this case, there's so many pages. What we usually do is advertise like a summary of the amendments. Obviously, these they're not going to go into the newspaper, all of the language. So we could have you advertise that summary, and then next week have the final like clean version, final formatted, not clean, showing all the edits, but I just don't know if like by Friday all the language formatted correctly, ready, like legally ready. But a summary that can be advertised. I don't know.
we could do a summary, then
Yeah.
the clean versions, the 23rd and the 1st, and then be ready to go for the 13th.
The timing mathematically doesn't make sense. Like you can't.
No, like Friday, it would have to go into the paper Friday. Monday is a holiday. There's.
I understand what Claire's saying. My concern was the substandard lot. That's going to the town council. I'm not as concerned with
The process.
the rest of it. The substandard lot is, as far as timing is, I think, utmost importance. The rest of this,
Yeah, I agree with you.
the subdivision part, although it definitely, the sooner the better, but the substandard lot one was
I agree.
Yeah.
like, that's the concern.
Yes.
And I don't think just from the legal perspective, getting everything,
It's procedural.
like, I'd rather do it right and than scramble it,
Mhm.
personally, if that's okay.
All right, sorry about the detour.
No,
It's okay.
no problem. One more, section 502. This is technical review, I believe.
Yeah. I have a question about that.
Okay, so you want a summary first before your question?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a summary
this-
first.
Summary.
This is similar to Unified Development Review. You've enabled it in the zoning ordinance, and this is the planning subdivision side of the, basically the same requirements, laying out the technical review committee, how it will operate, and establishing that you will have to adopt some rules of procedure for them. But this language mimics the subdivision. I mean, excuse me, the zoning language that you passed to the council.
Okay. Social, what's your question?
My question was that as I read all of these documents, sometimes the technical review committee was a requirement, and at other times it said something like if one is in place.
Mhm.
So what's the real answer?
The same thought.
It's
I
your,
thought Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say it's your, you know, it is established because it's been adopted into your zoning, and therefore at the, you know, when the council adopts that zoning ordinance, we'll have essentially created the technical review committee. Our recommendation is that whenever possible, that you leave some kind of wiggle room for the administrative officer to decide what goes before the technical
good.
review committee and what doesn't. So we did recommend, you know, instead of a shall, you could put a may there in terms of what types of applications they review, so that if your administrative officer has a one lot subdivision that meets all the requirements and they feel comfortable with that, they don't have to constitute a technical review committee meeting in order to process that. But if they wanted to, they could.
They could.
And right.
Okay, thank you.
That
And
makes sense.
I just want to add something to this one in particular, because the council will need to codify in the zoning ordinance a TRC first before the planning board can adopt regulations pertaining to that board. So just keep that in mind. It wouldn't make sense for you to adopt this amendment to your subdivision regs until the council adopts the TRC as a whole for the town.
And can that just be done through a town council meeting? I mean, what is required there?
So you previously forwarded a full positive recommendation on the TRC, the technical review committee, to the town council. They're just waiting to take that up. Presumably they would approve it, but just keep it in mind procedurally, this one might make sense just to wait until, I mean, consider it, get it ready, get all your questions asked and answered. And then as soon as the council adopts it, then you would approve this.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, approve or actually put the review committee together. Is that what you mean?
Yes, you would, by approving this subdivision amendment, you would create, well, the council's creating it. You would
The council would do it,
create the
right.
regulations for it, yes.
Yep, okay.
So
Any-
assuming that occurs, the adoption hopefully occurs before April, the town council will adopt the zoning, enabling the technical review committee prior to April. You know, we can put this subdivision, the related subdivision amendments before you in April. I mean, if for some reason, which we don't anticipate, it hasn't been adopted, you know, we can push it out, but I'm sure the timing should work out fine.
All right, any other questions?
No.
Oh, just one, Chris, and again,
Mary?
on the technical review committee, 502, section C. Do you also want somebody from Sea Level Rise there too? What's the thought?
I saw that.
What do
That
you
was-
think, Chris?
That was what I thought you were asking earlier, yeah.
Well, it was, you have 12. Here's the thing with this one. There's 12 membership, like a 12 suggested for membership. So out of 13, what's the chances? There's hardly enough, like you could barely get 5.
I know. Well, maybe.
But I
they
think
just
it's,
think,
Right,
I-
it's supposed to be more of like a,
5 people?
technical group,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
and.
I could make the argument for, for all of these as well as the Sea Level Rise Committee, like chair, depending on where it was,
Well,
right?
yeah, sure, absolutely.
So I think, I mean, I don't
It's just
know,
that,
I don't know when this is actually gonna come up. This group,
yeah,
and I don't know how you're gonna get this group together.
or who they're gonna be. What are your thoughts, Jen?
I don't have enough staff. I don't know. I mean,
Right.
I think it's gonna be a whole, like, if you have 12 people on, you would have a whole
Oh, yeah,
additional
no,
board, which.
sure, I get it. 5 would
the
be great.
same
Like Chris said.
requirements that Like
Mhm.
for distribution, posting meetings, all of that,
Mhm.
so less.
Can the group be flexible so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
a project that is near a
appropriate.
flood zone would include a sea
Well,
level rise
I-
person?
Right under it, number
think-
D, letter D says may invite additional members to sit for specific projects.
Right,
So
and I think that would be
That
appropriate
would
if it
do
was
it.
in the, if,
That would
obviously, if
cover
it was somewhere where the Sea Level Rise Committee would have input.
Uh-huh.
That would cover it.
If it was at the
wouldn't it?
top of Pilot Hill, I would say no.
That would cover it.
But I agree with Mary, it's very
It
important.
is. Any other questions on 502?
No,
No.
Then I will make a motion to set the public hearing for April 10th.
second,
All in favor?
I,
All approved.
can I make a motion that we move Dex to when Margie comes back? She has a strong.
I'm gonna table that to the March meeting. I make a motion to
Okay.
table it to the March meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's her baby.
All in favor?
I,
Um, approval of January 10th minutes.
I wasn't here.
I don't know if that was.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
I'll
Oh,
make a motion to
thank you,
approve the
Ashley. Bye.
minutes.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
Karen.
you.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 10th.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Meeting adjourned. Second. Aye. Favor.
Thanks.